Hey everyone, today I want to talk to you about when you're allowed to take photos in public, what you're allowed to use them for, do you need a consent form, are you allowed to make money from them, and what is commercial use? Okay, so this is a question I get asked all the time, and I think it's great because you want to make sure you're on the right side of the law on this kind of thing and to understand your rights. Two things to point out from the outset. One, laws vary from country to country, so please double check specifics for your country. And two, I'm not a lawyer. This is my understanding, having spoken to attorneys in America, barristers in Australia, and the police in Hong Kong and others in this sphere. And I'm confident, shooting in the countries that I go to, that I'm on the right side of the law. So I just wanted to give you an understanding of that. Okay, so first of all, let's clarify one thing. If you're in a public place and I can see you and you can see me, there's nothing stopping me taking your picture. When I speak in generalities like this, I'm talking about Australia, America, Hong Kong, UK, and a few other countries for sure. Other places, you better check it for yourself. But if you're in a public place and that person is visible to you, even if they're on private property, if they're standing in their front garden or inside their shop or inside their house even, then you have the right to take their photograph. And in Australia, quite importantly, they do not have the right to demand you delete the image, and the police cannot compel you to delete the image. That's considered like destruction of property and some form of assault, and from my understanding. So you can't be forced to delete your images. If it comes down to it and you really don't want to, then go to the police station and most likely you're in the right.
Another important thing to note is that just because you're free to enter somewhere doesn't mean it's a public space. Shopping malls and even some markets are actually private spaces. The lobby of big buildings is also a private space. Somebody owns that and they do have the right to limit photo taking. It also applies to private spaces in terms of property rights. So if the tenant of somewhere, even if they don't own it, or if they've rented out, for example, a concert hall for the night, they do have the right to tell you not to take photos, such as in theaters, concerts, art galleries, or anywhere else like that. They do have the right to say no pictures, and that's the end of the story.
Now, I'm not saying that this is moral or whatever, I'm just telling you my understanding of the law. So if somebody, in Australia at least, if someone reasonably has the expectation of privacy, then they should have it. We don't have a right to privacy and we don't have special privacy rules for kids. So all of this applies to children as well, except for in some situations where the image may be overly sexual. But generally speaking, if you're, for example, on the beach, sunbathing, topless, or in your, your board shorts or whatever, and you're freely out for everyone to see, then yes, someone can take your photograph and they can sell it. They do not need your consent. Digest that for a minute. But there is the condition in Australia, at least, of reasonably expect privacy. So if you're in a public place like a changing room at the beach, but it would be expected that there's some privacy in there, then no, people can't just take your photograph there. And I would argue that if someone's getting changed in their house and the curtain happens to be open and you're able to see it, they reasonably expected privacy there, so don't take a photo of it. I'm picking extreme examples. I'm not suggesting that any of you would actually be doing this stuff.
A notable exception that was pointed out by an attorney is the use of novel technology or unexpected angles. I'm sure none of you are doing this, but that covers things like cameras that can see through clothing or upskirt. If it's fair to assume that with normal technology and normal viewing angles something won't be seen, there is a right to expect privacy.
Now, let's just clarify what commercial purposes means. It may sound commercial purposes if I take your headshot on the street, make an enlargement of it, and sell it for $1,000 a print. Sounds pretty commercial, right? That's not what commercial purposes means. You are absolutely within your rights to do what I just said. Commercial purposes is to use the image to endorse a product or company or service or something like that. So the example that somebody gave on the website recently was that you can take my photo and you can sell it as an art print or hang it on your wall or whatever, but you can't put it on a box of cereal. If I happen to be wearing a Manfrotto jacket, you can't then sell the photo to Manfrotto for them to say, hey, look, this guy endorses Manfrotto. Or if I get a photo that happens to have a whole family wearing Levi's jeans, I can't, sell it to Levi's, or Levi's can't use it to advertise their product. But as an image, it can be sold in its own right.
The use of an image for commercial reasons without permission is called misappropriation of likeness, and it also applies to the voice or any other easily identifiable features of that person. It even includes impersonators.
Of course, there are some exceptions, like sometimes you can't photograph some military or government buildings, you can't photograph people who are in a witness protection program or something, but you're not to know that. But if that were to come up, then probably you'd be taken to the station and have the situation explained to you. I've had complaints and had this tested in Hong Kong. The police validated when someone on the street was complaining about me taking their photo that I have the right to. When I was in America, and a shop owner said, you can't take photos of our store, of me in our store, because the products are copyright, we own the copyright to them. Attorney who happened to be with me explained that we're in a public place. If your products are in view of that public place, too bad, so sad, it's fair game, we can take the photo.
No, we're not. Sorry, we're not allowed to let anyone take pictures.
If he walks into your premises, you can control who takes pictures.
This is our pictures, sir.
This is a public right-of-way. You can do whatever you want. This is a public right-of-way.
So, keep that in mind. I really suggest that you print out a list of rights wherever you can find it for your country and keep it in your bag in case it comes to a little altercation, because security guards, people of the public generally don't know the rules and rights and obligations of the public and of photographers. Police generally do though. So if it comes down to it and they say, I'm calling the police, just say fine, give them the 5 minutes to get the police there, and you'll probably find that you're on the right side of the law. In Australia, for example, at least in New South Wales, it may have changed for other states by now, but you also have authority to shoot on trains and public transport and stuff. It was tested in Parliament. The Minister for Transport spoke in Parliament explaining that public transport and tracks and stations and anyone who works for the government, like police and transit officers and whatever else, are in a public space and they're fair game. The only, it gets to be a grey area because some people will say, if you've got a tripod out, that could be a trip hazard. So then that's when they can start to use that. Often you'll hear people saying, if you've got a tripod or cables, then we're going to assume it's for professional use, it's for commercial use, therefore we're going to require a permit or we're not going to allow it. That's actually not justified because you could be just taking it to sell the headshot. So you shouldn't need a permit in that instance. However, now often that's been rewritten to say that tripods could be a trip hazard, so if you're going to have those up in a public place, you need to get permission for it. So there are lots of grey areas. Of course, I'm sure you can appreciate why some people don't want their photo taken in public, but general rule of thumb, if they're in a public place and you're in a public place or another legal vantage point where you can see them and they don't reasonably have an expectation of privacy, then yes, you can take the photograph. There are funny little instances like Germany, you can't take a photo of a person in a public place, but if there's 3 or more, it's considered a group and then it's okay. So make sure you check with your own country.
And of course, just having the legal right to do something doesn't mean it's the right thing to do, and it won't stop you from getting a punch in the head or having your camera smashed. So if somebody specifically asks you not to take their picture, maybe think about it.
This is part of I'll put this into the Business of Photography playlist. It has all different tips and tricks about photography and how to make a business of it and what legal things are going on and advice on getting started. So check out that playlist and let me know what you think. Do jump over to the website, sign up for our mailing list. There's a forum going on where you can pose questions like this and have people from all around the world giving you their experiences and understandings of that kind of thing. So make sure you get involved there too. Thanks, I'll see you soon.